I'm gonna let folks trickle in here at over 1,300 RSVPs today, which is super exciting. So we're gonna let folks come on in and from the waiting room into the live session, and then we'll get going. So bear with me here, just about 10, 15 seconds of silence and we'll get going.
Okay.
Still going on. Great. Awesome. Well, my name is Forrest. I lead partnerships here at Herd. Super excited to have our friends from Thrizer here today and presenting on how to grow your private pay caseload. This was our most well-attended webinar that here at Herd we've hosted. And so obviously a lot of folks curious out there and looking to learn. For those unfamiliar with Herd, we're an accounting and tax platform built for mental health entrepreneurs. I'll share a little link in the chat in case you're familiar to learning more. And for all of our Herd members on this call, thank you for joining. Hope you share feedback after the fact, and good luck with tax season. So I'll hand it over to Sanjana.
Yeah, thank you so much, Forrest. We are super excited to partner with Herd. We share kind of the similar passion to help therapists and just mental health professionals kind of streamline all of the back end stuff, right? And so that's where we're coming from, Thrizer as well. I'm Sanjana. I'm one of the co-founders at Thrizer. You'll hear a little bit more about Thrizer later on, but essentially we are a tool that clinicians and clients can use to navigate their out-of-network benefits, and make it a much more simple, accessible, and transparent process. So with that, we can go ahead and get started. There's a lot of exciting things that we want to cover today. Um, just a quick slide with housekeeping. The chat is disabled, so you'll actually see a Q&A tool where you can pop in your questions. We'll try our absolute best to answer all your questions. I'll try to monitor it throughout. Forrest is here as well, to just kind of, we'll be monitoring it throughout, but feel free to pop those questions in there. This webinar is being recorded. So, if we aren't able to kind of get to everything, you can absolutely watch it later. If any questions come up, you can always reach out to me. You'll also, I'll pop my email so you can directly reach out to me afterwards. But yeah, we can go ahead and get started then. So here's what we're covering today. Essentially, we've broken it up into, 6 different topics. We'll start with the client funnel, just kind of how marketing overall can be approached within your private practice. What are out-of-network benefits and how can they be beneficial for you? How does the super bill process work? Reimbursement, tips and tricks, and resources. So my intention with this webinar is that we are breaking it down into super bite-sized pieces, right? You can go on to Google right now or ChatGPT, whatever you prefer, and just type in out-of-network benefits and you'll get a block of text. My intention is that we're able to really break it down into bite-sized pieces and explain it in a way that you feel comfortable walking out of this webinar, being able to explain it to your clients, right? Because that's the ultimate goal here. Your clients are going to need to be able to confidently navigate their benefits. And so we're really kind of teaching the coach here to make sure that you're able to then help your clients. So with that, please drop questions. Feel free to, we'll want to keep this interactive. We have a few poll questions coming up. And so we will go ahead and get started with that. So client funnel, and I actually have a quick poll question just so we can get a sense for, where, everyone is coming in from. So let me quickly just launch that poll. Here we go. So essentially it is, what does your current caseload look like? So are you fully in network? Are you fully private pay? Or are you kind of somewhere in between? I'll give it a couple minutes or a couple seconds here. Awesome. We have a good spread. All right, I think we're coming up on the end here. So I will go ahead and end the poll and I will share the results. As you can see, we have a good mix here. So we have, I would say, mostly folks who are currently in network, right? And would like to maybe transition into private pay. So that's a perfect audience for us. We also have some who are fully private pay, and some who are mostly private pay and accept some insurance. So that's a good kind of gauge for me to see how deep we want to go. Given that we have the audience that's, probably new to out-of-network benefits, I will try to go a little bit slower on that part. And yeah, we will go ahead and kick it off. So client funnel. I like to talk about this because I think that, when we talk about a private practice, we usually think of two phases, right? There's we need to attract clients, and then we need to know how to retain them. So of course, attracting clients, there's a slew of different avenues that you can do that through, of course, referrals, directories, making a really robust website, sharing your value proposition on there, blogging, which helps with your SEO, social media. So those are all things that, you're probably familiar with or acquainting yourself with. And that's all amazing, right? And then of course, after we get clients, we have, the slew of things that we can do to retain them. And, of course, clear expectations, tailored approach, like all of you know that better than I do. But one aspect that I think that we don't talk enough about, and that's what this, webinar is focused on, is how do we actually convert clients after they hear about us? A lot of clinicians that we hear from, they're like, people are coming in the door. That is not the issue, right? Like people are hearing about me through my Psychology Today. I'm getting referrals, but they come there, they come through the door, but then what do I do at that touch point to make sure that we convert them into clients? And so that's where, I think we're going to be expanding this client funnel and really focusing on that piece. And so, of course, in the converting clients bucket, we could have consult calls, whether it's free or paid. That can be a really great way for you to, get to know your prospects, for them to get to know you to see if there's a good fit. It is also an opportunity for you to share your value proposition with them as well. And then even after that, right? Like even after, let's say that you're, on the call and you're like, wow, I think there's a really, really good fit here. Then, finances might be that big barrier. That's often what we hear, right? And so maybe you offer a sliding scale. Maybe you do pro bono, sessions for a bit if they're really struggling financially. But these are great options, especially if you're fully private pay or you want to accept some clients whose insurance you aren't credentialed with. But that can't be like a super long-term solution, right? Or it's not sustainable because what ends up happening there is that you're likely going to, offer a sliding scale. And then at that point, it does affect your financial goals at some point. If you just kind of start, offering sliding scale to most of your clients, or pro bono services to most of your clients, because then it also means that it could lead to burnout, right? You'll have to do more sessions in a week to be able to recover and meet your financial goals. And so that's where, out-of-network benefits can be a super, super powerful tool. And not only is it helpful for converting clients, it's actually super helpful for retaining clients, right? So, I can share from my personal experience. I'm a longtime therapy goer myself. I found my fit with a out-of-network provider who I absolutely adored. And this was, several years ago. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to pay $200 out of pocket. I want to see her weekly. Um, Sadly, I had to go to bi-weekly because of financial constraints. Then I had to go to monthly. And then eventually I had to stop therapy because I wasn't able to financially afford it, even if I was able to do $200 initially per session, right? And back then, I didn't even know about out-of-network benefits, nor that I had it. And so it can be a reason why people stop showing up to sessions, right? It's not because they don't love therapy. It's not because they're not getting value from it. It is probably because they are not able to financially sustain it anymore. And so that's where, out-of-network benefits can be really helpful in really providing crucial financial relief. So that's kind of the setup of where we'll be focusing on. Let me quickly just check the chat and any Q&A that is coming in. Let's see. Okay, cool. I think we're gonna address a lot of this. Let's keep moving on then. Let's dive into out-of-network benefits. So essentially, what are out-of-network benefits? And we're gonna break this down. I'm gonna give you the Google answer first, which is a little bit clean up, so it's a little bit easier to understand, but here's the answer, right? So benefits in a client's individual insurance plan that allows them to receive reimbursement for services from clinicians who don't accept their insurance. So that is a mouthful. What is this basically saying? This is saying even if you don't accept insurance directly, either that particular insurance plan or any insurance if you're fully private pay, clients can still receive insurance reimbursement, saving them an average of 60 to 70% of the cost of their sessions, depending on their insurance plan. And that's what we're going to focus a lot of time on. Of course, there's a lot of nuance there, but based on the thousands and thousands of claims that we have submitted at Thrizer, it is, the average tends to be around 60 to 70% is the average savings per session. So what does that mean then if we were to boil it down even further? Here's a quick example. Of course, this is not every scenario, but this could be one specific insurance plan, right? Even if you charge $200 a session and you get to keep all 200 of it, right? They might only be paying $80 per session after reimbursement. And that is incredible because that way, you're still receiving your full 200. They are only paying $80, right? And sometimes it can be, if they have really good benefits, we've seen as low as, it's 80% of it is covered. So in that case, they might only be paying $40 out of pocket. Sometimes they have, a higher co-insurance, so they might need to pay $120 out of pocket. So this is just an average based on the 60 to 70% that we see. But as you can see, they will receive some relief, right, from their out-of-network benefits, and therefore it can be a really powerful tool. Now, I just want to quickly address some FAQs, and they might be along the lines of some of the questions that are coming in. So what percentage of plans have out-of-network benefits? So this is a question that we get a lot at Thrizer. We, obviously can't comment on all the insurance plans out there. Of course, a lot of people are, it would just be commercial plans. A lot of people on Medicare and Medicaid are obviously out there. They don't have out-of-network benefits. And even if you have commercial insurance, there are only certain plans that have it. So, maybe the next question we can, what specific type of plans have out-of-network benefits? So PPO plans are always great. They will have out-of-network benefits. HMO plans, on the other hand, won't have out-of-network benefits. Medicare and Medicaid won't have out-of-network benefits. There are some non-PPO, non-HMO plans that will have out-of-network benefits. So really just depends on the plan. Based on everyone who kind of comes to us, about 70% of them do end up having out-of-network benefits. That could be a sub-selected group. We completely understand maybe people who already know they have benefits are coming to us, but just that is the average that we have seen in kind of the population of clients who are like, hey, I want to use Thrizer with my people, and can you help me out? So it ends up being about 70% of the people who come to us. What services or CPT codes can be reimbursed with OON benefits? So it's essentially like many CPT codes. So essentially, if it's an F code, it ends up being reimbursable very successfully. So 90834, 90837, couples therapy, group therapy, even psychological evaluations, assessments, testing, all of these things can be reimbursed in the out-of-network setting. Where it gets a little bit tricky are Z codes. So Z codes tend to be a bit tricky. They can be kind of 50-50. We still encourage people to submit claims for any Z codes, but of course, like they are kind of 50-50 up to the specific insurance plan, whether it'll be covered or not. How do we know if a client's plan has out-of-network benefits? So the way to do that is they can look at, the client can look at their insurance plan. Maybe, they're already aware of it. When they come to you, they're like, I know I have out-of-network benefits, or maybe they aren't aware and you should encourage them to kind of be like, do you have out-of-network benefits? Please check your insurance plan. Or they can call their insurance company and find out. It can be a little overwhelming, right? Because clients may not even know where to call or what even are out of network benefits. And so that's where, we'll talk a little bit about how you can streamline the process for them. That's kind of where Thrizer can be helpful. But the way to find out is by just contacting their insurance company. Now, there are two more questions that we'll actually dive into in depth now. So how do clients access their benefits? And then how do insurances determine the reimbursement rates? So those are the real like hot topics that I want to cover here, because especially that last one there, it's not very publicly announced. It's just based on the fact that we've processed a lot of claims, and so we understand the system a lot more now. And so we will definitely dive into that in a bit more detail. So I will look at the questions one more time, just so that I am able to answer some more of them. Okay, so okay, what percentage of clients usually use their out-of-network benefits? Typically, deductible is pretty high. We'll definitely talk about the deductible piece. I will get to that in a second. What is my legal responsibility in relationship with the insurance company? We'll talk about that. Many of my clients have huge out-of-network deductibles, absolutely. And okay, I think that's pretty much it. Cool, awesome. So that's basically kind of the overall kind of layout of this. We will move on to how do clients access their benefits. And so let's do a quick recap of in-network versus out-of-network billing, right? Because I think it can be a little confusing, especially because we have a lot of folks who are in-network here. So in-network therapy, right? Insurance sets the rates that clinicians can charge. And then clients pay a copay for their sessions. Clinicians will submit the claims and wait for reimbursement from insurance, right? So that's how in-network works. They set the rate, you submit the claims, the client just pays a copay. On top of that, of course, there will be a lot of notes and audits and things like that that you will have to adhere to and comply with for in-network therapy. That is much more lenient on the out-of-network side. So for out-of-network therapy, how it works is clinicians set your own rate. So it's basically going to be your private pay rate, whatever you want to set. And then clients submit their own super bill and wait for reimbursement. So reimbursement timelines, again, vary by specific insurance companies, but it's going to be about 6 weeks. So that's kind of the average that we've seen across different insurance plans. So if we were to kind of talk about super bills, I wanted to quickly ask you guys, if you are familiar with them and you are offering it to people, what percentage of you guys are doing that? So let me launch this poll. Here we go. Okay, this is being super wonky, so we're not going to do the poll, but I'm sure that some of you are offering super bills to your clients. And so what is it? If you're completely new to what super bills are, here is what it is. It's basically an invoice that you provide to your clients that they can then submit to their insurance plan or company for reimbursement. Now, this will get to the question of, what is the responsibility as a clinician? What information do you have to provide to an insurance company? So essentially, these are the things that you will have to provide on a super bill and what typically goes on a super bill. So just clinician and practice information. So your NPI, tax ID, address, contact information will go on the super bill. Then client information, so name, date of birth, and contact information. You will need a diagnosis code. So that needs to be on every claim in order for it to be processed. You will need a list of sessions with the dates of service, CPT code, and a session fee. So those are basically the pieces of information that go on a super bill. Questions that we get are, do they ask for notes? Do they ask for other documentation? Um, Rarely. There are definitely circumstances where they do. And in that case, the client will receive a notification, or if you're going through Thrizer, will receive a notification that they're asking, there's a request for documentation, but it happens pretty rarely. And so in that case, we would reach out to you and make sure that we, collect the right pieces of information. But in most cases, you submit a super bill and you don't need to send over notes or documentation or any of that. And so it can be a lot less work for you as well. Now, here's the end-to-end super bill process. And I like to show this slide because, a lot of times, um, you know, clinicians issue super bills, and then the kind of the process that the clients need to go through can be really overwhelming, right? And so we'll kind of walk through what that process looks like. And just so you can also educate your clients on and set expectations on, what that super bill process looks like so that they're aware. So first is, your client pays your full session rate. So whether say your rate is 200, they have to pay your full rate first. Then the clinician issues a super bill. The client would need to submit the super bill to their insurance. And this is where that nuance comes in. Each insurance plan is different. Some of them need to be faxed in, some of them can be done online, some of them need to be emailed in. So it really depends on the specific insurance plan. Then, typically a client will need to follow up with their insurance first for status updates. If, a lot of clients tend to do this because there's no online tracking system for super bills. So a lot of clients, if they're curious, may want to hop on the call with insurance to figure out whether they're, what their status of the claim is. And then the client receives their reimbursement check if all goes well. And then finally, the client will deposit the check to their bank account. So that's essentially the process that is the end-to-end super bill process. It can be a little cumbersome. Of course, once a client kind of does this, they will understand how to do it, right? The first few times will be complicated. Maybe after a while, they're able to figure out how to do it well. This is where, Thrizer can be helpful too, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But this is basically what that end-to-end super bill process looks like. And yeah, let me quickly monitor questions again here. Let me go back. Okay, questions. Is it possible to have a plan where clients don't need to wait until there's a deductible reached? Yes, there are some clients that have plans that don't have deductibles. We would say that's pretty rare though. And it's not very common. The most, and we'll get to the deductible slide in a bit, but it's between about 1,500 to 3,000 is the average deductible we've seen, barring that they have a high deductible plan, right? If they have a high deductible plan that's like $5,000 or $10,000, then of course it becomes difficult. They would have to meet that deductible before actually getting any kind of reimbursement. What kind of circumstances might prompt an insurance company to request notes? Honestly, we haven't seen a science to it. It's kind of random. Some insurance companies ask for it more than others. If it's the first time you're submitting a claim with that insurance company, that is kind of might be a reason why that they're asking for it, but there's really no pattern to it. It's just kind of up to the insurance company as most things are. Um, how often do you send a super bill? That's a great question. So, what I've seen most clinicians do is they send it monthly, right? So typically their EHR will have an automatic super bill process. So, it'll create the super bill for you and it gets kind of put into their client portal monthly. Of course, if a client wants to ask you more frequently, clinicians are typically accommodating of that. Like if they did want to submit it every other week, then they can do so, but typically it's monthly. Can the client do this without my help or do I need to be involved? Yeah, so that's where, you don't need to be involved, right? You can just issue the super bill and they can totally navigate it on their own. If they do come back to you with questions, you could let them know, hey, here's a resource or something like that. But if you want to stay completely out of it, you can, right? You can just say, here's a super bill, and they can try to figure it out on their own. Do you have to be credentialed with that plan to accept the client out of network? No, you don't have to be. In fact, you shouldn't be credentialed with the insurance plan that you want to accept out of network. If you are credentialed with them, you cannot see clients out of network. Okay, cool. I think that's pretty much the questions I see. There are a few other ones that I can get to a bit later. You can always reach out to me as well. Okay, cool. So how are reimbursement rates determined? So I do want to spend a good chunk of time here. I'm also seeing some questions come in of, is this entirely focused on out-of-network billing? Yeah, it is. So if you want to focus on the attracting clients through the SEO, marketing, blogging, and all of that in that first bucket, we won't be covering that in today's webinar. This is strictly focused on how do you optimize out-of-network benefits for your clients, and then also, be able to support them in that process. It's important if that is kind of the realm that you're in and you're trying to go into private pay, I would say this is very important just so that when people do ask you questions, even if you want to stay out of it, you're able to say, hey, I at least have this kind of understanding around it. I can point you to some resources. Cool. So before we this is going to be the math lesson, and I will try my best to break it down as slowly and simply as possible. So, client responsibility, right? Here's the one formula that you kind of want to walk away with. That is your rate minus the insurance reimbursement is the client's responsibility, right? That's like the basic formula. So let's say your rate is 200, insurance reimbursement for this particular client is 120. That means they are paying $80 out of pocket. That's their responsibility, right? So keep that in mind as we kind of go through these slides because it can get a little confusing. But that's where we will always come back to. And so let's focus on this insurance reimbursement piece. Obviously, the clinician rate, you would set it, right? It's up to you what you feel is fair for your services. And then insurance reimbursement is where none of us have any control over, but I will try to kind of peel the curtain behind that. So how are reimbursement rates determined? The biggest disclaimer to all of this is out-of-network reimbursements vary by individual plans. So you could see two clients have very similar plans and they could still have different reimbursement rates, right? It could be the same insurance company, it could be similar geography, it could be all of those things, but they could still have wildly different out-of-network reimbursements. And I'm convinced insurance companies do this on purpose. But that's kind of just what we're dealing with. And so one thing though is that each reimbursement is determined by these three things. So every insurance plan will have these three things, or their reimbursement will be based on a deductible, which we've already kind of started talking about, allowed amounts, and then a co-insurance percentage. So we will dive into each of these pieces and I will try to answer some of the questions that were coming in the chat. So deductible. It's the amount that the client needs to pay fully out of pocket before reimbursements start kicking in. So let's dive in a little bit more. So what does this mean if you're seeing that client, right? the client would be responsible for your full session rate until they meet their deductible, right? And we'll do an example at the end of this, but just simple math. Let's say that your rate is $2,000 deductible, 10 sessions, right? That's highly simplified because you'll see how allowed amounts fit into all of this in a second, but just means that they would have to pay your full rate until they meet their deductible. Of course, they have to be submitting super bills through this, right? There's no other way that an insurance company will know that they are seeing you for services if they are not submitting super bills. And so another question I think that came up earlier is how far back can you submit super bills? Within the calendar year is totally fair. I know we're in a new year right now. Deductibles typically reset, which is my next point here. But you can submit it within the calendar year. That's totally fine. You could also try to submit it for past years. That becomes a little bit more difficult, but we always encourage people to try. But let's say we were in September instead, and you want to submit, a client wants to submit sessions for, back in March or April, they can absolutely submit super bills for several months prior. Deductibles reset every year. So, and that's where that, whole thing around if they do have a high deductible plan, that's, 5,000 or plus, it does become difficult, right? Even if they're seeing you weekly, they'll likely not meet their deductible. This is where, we are trying to coach clients, whenever people reach out to Thrizer and we're like, hey, like, what do we do about this? There's open enrollment. If they're truly, wanting to find financial relief for their, therapy services, their monthly premiums will go up a bit, but of course, their out-of-network benefits they will reap benefits from it dramatically if they're kind of willing to do that. So we kind of try to coach people, and if you want to get into that conversation, of course you don't need to, but if you want to, you could always recommend to them that, hey, come open enrollment, try to find a lower deductible plan. The next piece here is, we'll get into allowed amounts on the next slide, but one nuance here is that only the allowed amount is applied towards their deductible. So I'm not going to go into this in more detail. It'll make sense in a couple slides, but just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Allowed amount. So this is where insurance really starts becoming a complete black box. And this is the reason why reimbursement rates are so wildly different for different insurance plans and even the same insurance plans. So they set an allowed amount, which is the maximum amount that the insurance will reimburse for each out-of-network therapy session. Each particular client and their insurance plan will have their own allowed amount, right? And that's what we were saying, their reimbursement rates vary. It's because of the allowed amount that they vary, right? And so let's dive in a bit deeper. Allowed amounts are a complete black box and only known fully in accuracy after the first claim. Of course, we're able to predict it based on specific, similar plans, but it is often a complete black box. We're able to kind of give a directional sense. If the client calls their insurance company, we've kind of had this question come up in the past. Can they call their insurance company and ask them what their allowed amount is? It's kind of 50-50. Sometimes they will hear back on it. Other times they won't. The only way to kind of really know in full accuracy is after you hear back from the first claim, even if you're working towards a deductible, right? Because you'll know how much was applied towards that deductible. So you'll know the allowed amount before that. So that's the first piece. This is another question we often get. Allowed amounts don't determine how much you as a clinician can charge, right? So again, it's just whatever the insurance company feels like is the maximum they are willing to reimburse, right? It is not, doesn't dictate how much you can charge. If the allowed amount is 150, doesn't mean you have to charge 150. You can charge 200, you can charge more than that. So that's a question we often get, so I wanted to clarify that. The other piece here, we'll get into co-insurance on the next slide. Clients may be responsible for a portion of their allowed amount. And so I'll hop to the next slide here because it'll make more sense. This is essentially the percentage of the allowed amount that the client is responsible for. So, it is based off of the allowed amount and not the clinician's rate. This is a question we often get, clients will look at their insurance plan. They'll be like, oh, I have $1,000 deductible and my co-insurance is 30%. They'll then try to do the math and say, okay, 30%, I'm only responsible for 30% of my clinician's rate, which is $200. And they're like, great, my copay is $60, right? Or co-insurance is $60. That's not how it works. The co-insurance is based off of the allowed amount. It is not based off of the clinician's rate. And then when we do an example, it'll make a little bit more sense. This one's actually published directly in the insurance plan. So deductibles and co-insurance are published directly in their insurance plan. So we will be able to kind of find those out directly from there. Allowed amounts are not published. And so that's why it can feel like a black box. And then the typical co-insurance ranges from anywhere between 20 to 50%. There are also plans that have 0% co-insurance. There are also plans that have a little bit more, 60 or 70%. But the typical range that at least we've seen are between 20 to 50%. So now we kind of have all the pieces to put together to determine this reimbursement amount, right? We said the reimbursement amount was based on deductible, which comes into a little bit later, but it's based on the allowed amount and the co-insurance. So let's do a quick example. If, let's say, for this particular insurance plan, the allowed amount is 150 and it says the co-insurance percentage is 20%, right? What does that actually mean? That means that insurance reimbursement will be 80% of the 150, so it's $120. As you can see already, even if they published 150 as the allowed amount, that is not what they are going to be paying out. The client is still responsible for that 20% co-insurance of just the allowed amount, and that's $30 in this case, right? So, and of course, remember, so far, this is just the portion based off of the allowed amount. Of course, if your rate is higher, then you would need to tack on this extra $30 to it. So this is an important note because, again, a lot of people end up thinking, oh, it's 20% of my clinician's rate, or, I will get the entire 150 allowed amount. That is not how insurance companies, unfortunately, do it. It is based on the co-insurance and allowed amount that you can then calculate the insurance reimbursement. So let's bring all of this together, and then I will pause for a lot of questions right after this. I know there's a lot that came in, but let's just put it all together first. So clinician's rate, right? Let's say that your rate is 200. Let's say that the deductible for this particular example is 1,500. Allowed amount is 150, and co-insurance is 20%, right? So let's put these pieces together. Pre-deductible. The client will pay $200 per session for the first 10 sessions, right? And why is it 10 sessions? Because of that nuance that we were talking about earlier. Only 150 applies towards the deductible, right? So it's 150 times 10, 1,500. Even if you try to do the math and did 1,500 divided by 200, you would get to about, less than 8 sessions, but that's not how it works. Only the allowed amount applies. So that's how much they're paying for your sessions for the first 10 sessions. They're paying your full rate. And of course, they have to be submitting super bills. Post-deductible. Client will receive $120 in reimbursement. We did the math on the previous slide. Again, it's 80% of that allowed amount. And so that is what they will receive, which is 120. So remember that first formula that we had, client's responsibility is the clinician rate minus the insurance reimbursement. So it's $80 per session that they're paying out of pocket. So it's pretty remarkable. Honestly, like, it gets a little convoluted and it's pretty crazy, but this is how, we're able to create a system where the client is only paying $80 while you still earn $200 per session, right? Of course, if you were toggling any of this, there's just so many aspects of this that are, this is just an example, but what you could be certain of is if a client has a reasonable deductible and they have out-of-network benefits, right, they will be receiving a portion of their session feedback. And that could, will add up to thousands, especially if they're seeing you weekly or biweekly, and especially if they're seeing you across several years. So they will be saving a ton of money that way. So I will pause here. Let me go to the questions and I will do my best to answer all of this. Um, From your experience, does it seem like the OON allowed amounts exceed the amount that the in-network therapists are getting? Yes. Yes. On average, that is what we've seen. Allowed amounts, the average allowed amount that, I can kind of share is 130. 130 is the average allowed amount that we've seen. Blue Cross Blue Shield, for example, tends to be a little bit lower. Aetna and Cigna are really good. Sometimes we've seen Aetna Cigna clients whose allowed amounts are $200, right? Perhaps even higher. United Healthcare tends to be somewhere in between, about 150. And that's kind of the average that we've seen across these big four. And of course, the local plans and all will have their own allowed amounts. But just based on these big plans, what we've seen is that it does tend to be higher than the contracted rates that clinicians would receive in network. Do clients have to submit superbills before they get any reimbursements? And if so, how soon do you recommend the client submits their superbills? Yes, so that is kind of the underpinning of this whole thing, right? The client would have to submit superbills. There's no other way that an insurance company knows that they're having sessions, right? They could be having so many sessions. We see this all the time with clients that they have so many sessions and they don't let their insurance company know, and they're leaving so much money on the table, right? And so that's why we always encourage people to know that they have out-of-network benefits and that they start, submitting them. And how soon do you recommend they submit it? You can submit it as soon as the session happens. You could submit it monthly, like I said. It really just comes down to how frequently they're receiving those super bills and how frequently they're able to get to submitting those bills. Is the allowed amount per session or total for the year? It is per session. So it is one number per session that the insurance company sets. So your client can't know how much they'll be reimbursed until they pay you for sessions in full. Yes. So that's the nuance. They won't know exactly how much they'll be reimbursed until that first claim comes back, right? That's, again, we at Thrizer, we try to give you a directional sense. But again, it's just an estimate based on other similar plans. There is no way to find out what the exact reimbursement amount is. The only way would be if, the client calls their insurance company and the insurance company is willing to share their allowed amount, which they typically don't do that though. So. This is a really good question. So if someone has a high deductible, is that usually a number that includes any and all medical costs out of network, or is it designated to mental health? Like if my client has other medical appointments out of network, will it count towards this deductible? Yes. So the way that it works is there are kind of buckets for it. Therapy services. So it could be physical therapy, occupational therapy, mental health therapy, dietitian. It's kind of these specific services that are all one bucket. That will be counted towards that same deductible, right? So of course, when they're submitting super bills, if they are also going to PT or OT or seeing a dietitian, any of that, they should be submitting super bills for that too, because it will count towards that same pool of deductible. But that is specific to their out-of-network deductible, right? So a lot of clients will also get confused between their in-network and their out-of-network deductible. Those are two separate pools of money, right? So an in-network deductible can only be met with in-network providers. Out-of-network can only be met with out-of-network providers, right? So you can't cross across those. But yes, a lot of different services can apply towards that mental health bucket as well. And yeah, there was a question on, is there a separate deductible for each? Yes, and I know there's a lot of questions coming up across this, but are you saying that in all OON plans, deductibles must always have to be reached before any reimbursements are, start kicking in? Yes, yes. The only case that isn't the case is if they have a $0 deductible, right? There are some plans that do offer $0 deductibles in the out-of-network setting. They can opt into those plans if they want. But most plans will have a deductible, and that deductible will need to be met before reimbursements start kicking in. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. There are a lot of these questions. I will try my best. I'll try to see if I can answer these questions afterwards if we get through all the content. But those are kind of the big questions that I saw popping up, so I will move on for now. Okay, so now let's talk about tips and tricks, right? Like that's the reason you guys are here. You could have looked all these things up. Hopefully, this was able to be broken down in a way that you actually understand it. But here's the first tip, right? We always recommend that you add out-of-network benefits to your website and intake process. The reason for this is that clients, I can assure you, 80% of clients don't know what out-of-network benefits are, and a larger percentage of that, they don't know if they have out-of-network benefits, right? So I would always recommend that you add it to your website if you are looking to expand your private pay caseload and have it be a part of your intake process, right? So it can be on your website. It can also be, in the intake process where you're talking through finances, with your client. Again, it depends on how involved you want to be. You can just do it on your website. You don't have to do it in your intake if you want to be completely out of the process. But here's just a sample narrative, and we're happy to kind of share this with you. But you could say something like, while I don't accept your insurance, you may have out-of-network benefits in your insurance plan. This means that you would be able to get back a large chunk of our session fees as a reimbursement. I'm happy to provide you with super bills, right? So that's just something quick that you can put on your website. And so at least hopefully it kind of encourages prospects and clients to be able to say, hey, like, what are out-of-network benefits? Let me go research about it, right? And it can kind of pique their interest and kind of help them, understand that a little bit more. If you do want to go the extra step, there are obviously clinicians who want to do this. You may be one of them, you may not. It is totally fine, whichever camp you fall in. But if you would like to be a little bit more involved in the process, you can also take the time to walk clients through the Super Bowl process, right? This, I think, will help with retention. And as I was saying earlier, like if, I had known about out-of-network benefits, maybe I could have stayed in therapy and didn't have to stop it the first time around, right? And that is where retention ultimately can be kind of helped with this particular tip. Again, if you're like, I left panels because I don't want to be involved, that's also totally fair, right? So if you did want to kind of explain it, you could say something like, here's a super bill. You'll need to submit it to your insurance company, either through fax, email, or their portal. Once you do so, it takes about 6 weeks for them to process the claim, after which you'll receive a reimbursement check in the mail, right? That's, a simple way to kind of explain the process to them, let them know that this is how it works. That way they know that, they're not just going to be paying a copay, right? They will still be needing to front your entire cost and then wait for that reimbursement check. That seems to be a nuance that a lot of people miss. And so that is an option. If you want to be kind of transparent about that, you can do so. So that's the next tip. And this is where we'll get a little bit, just a quick plug for Thrizer. You can automate the whole process with Thrizer. And, I like to share Inception story because myself and my co-founder, we are longtime therapy goers. We navigated super bills and it was an absolute mess, right? We submitted super bills, never heard back. Like I said, no online way of tracking anything. There was this, 6-step process, right? Every step of the way, there are friction points in the whole thing. And so we really built Thrizer on the mission to make it as simple as possible for clients while also being a really powerful tool for clinicians. And you don't have to do too much, right? So this is where Thrizer can come in. So with Thrizer, it takes just one step. What you'll do is you will charge the client through Thrizer's payment platform. Um, Clients just pay a copay post-deductible, no strings attached. If they have out-of-network benefits, they've met their deductible, they have the option to just pick the copay option. Of course, again, the nuance here is that they would have to meet their deductible first. You can use Thrizer. We recommend using Thrizer even if they're working towards a deductible, because we will automatically submit the claim for them completely free of charge. So here's everything that Thrizer handles, right? We will instantly verify whether a client has out-of-network benefits. We have a free benefits checker. You automatically provide courtesy claim submissions every time you charge a client. That happens all in the back end. And the cost associated with this for you as a practice or clinician is just the standard 3% credit card fee. So there are no other monthly fees or, setup fees or contracts or any of that. Really, you can think of us as a payment platform similar to like Stripe or Square. If you're doing your billing through, an EHR, you would just not do the billing aspect through that. You would do everything else on your EHR. You would just do the charging through Thrizer, pay that similar 3% credit card fee, and that's all you're doing. The benefit of doing so is that also Thrizer fronts the rest of the clinician's fees to make you whole up front. And then we wait for insurance to reimburse us back. So you're not waiting for us for the 6 weeks to get paid, right? You're getting paid every Friday, just minus that 3% credit card fee. And we wait for insurance to reimburse us back. And we have a strict no back charges policy. If we've predicted that this particular, and they've already paid their copay, right? And we said that this client has out-of-network benefits for whatever reason, if that claim gets denied, we will take the difference. We will just let the client know, we'll resubmit the claim, we'll try to recover that. If insurance isn't willing to honor their benefits for future sessions, at that point, we will let the clients know that, hey, seems like the out-of-network benefits are not, working in this case, you will be responsible for your full rate. But for sessions they've already paid for, you or the client will not be back charged for it. So this is honestly like a simple process. You can get set up in minutes. And we really do think that it's a way to make therapy more accessible. The superbill process can be an absolute pain to navigate. So we hope that this is helpful. Cool. So this is where Thrizer would fit in, right? It can be a powerful tool in converting and retaining clients. And so that's where that, it kind of fits into your funnel. We don't, we receive questions of, does Thrizer help with attracting clients? The only way that I can see us saying yes is if you put Thrizer on your website, right? You could say, hey, I have a service that kind of walks through, does everything for you. From a superbill side of the house, that could help you attract clients. We've anecdotally heard that. But truly where we're sitting is in the converting and retaining clients aspect. And so if you were to, use Thrizer, here's how that narrative would change, right? It's no longer go do this, right? It's, while I don't accept your insurance, you may have out-of-network benefits in your insurance plan that could save you a large portion of our session fees. I'm happy to take care of all the insurance stress for you. That is verifying your benefits and submitting claims for you via Thrizer. You can also just pay a copay for sessions after you meet your deductible, right? That is something you can easily put on your website. It is something you can incorporate into your intake. Remember, all you're doing is charging them through Thrizer. There is nothing else that you're doing. Everything else happens in the back end. So if you feel like this could be a powerful tool to retain and, convert clients when they're on that call, that consult call, this could be a really powerful tool for you. So I will kind of wrap us up and then I'll do questions because we have 5 minutes here. This is what you'll be receiving after this. So you will get a webinar recording. You will also get an out-of-network benefits cheat sheet. So it'll basically go through kind of the math that we did. It'll go through what an allowed amount is, what coinsurance is. It's just as a refresher. If you don't want to rewatch this entire webinar, it'll all be on that cheat sheet. And then you'll also get a free trial for Thrizer. So if you sign up with the link, with the code HERD, you'll get waived credit card fees for the first 2,500 in transactions that you do through our payment platform. So yeah, try us out. You could try us out for a few clients, see how it works. And we hope that regardless of what, where Thrizer fits into your journey, that this webinar was helpful in kind of peeling the curtain behind, for out-of-network benefits. I completely understand that it is such a black box. It's taken myself years to understand how everything works. And so I can only imagine how it feels for all of you. So yeah, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to go to the questions now. Feel free to hop out if you have no other questions, but I'm going to answer some of these. Okay. If I had already signed up with Thrizer before this webinar, can I still use the promotional code? Yes, you can. So feel free to just email our team, I'm gonna drop a few links here. So one is, let me drop this link first. Here's where you can sign up. So it's join. There you go. So that is where you can go to sign up and get that free trial. If you did just sign up and you haven't started with us yet, feel free to just email us at help@thrizer.com. We will make sure to get that applied towards your account. If you have any specific questions that you would like me to answer, you can just email me directly at sanjana@thrizer.com as well. So that is kind of all the resources I'll leave you with, and you will also be receiving that recap email as well. I will try to get to 2 more questions here. Okay, is the link not working? One sec. Let me drop it here. There we go. If you guys can check the answered queue in the Q&A, you'll be able to get that link there. Okay. Oh, this is a really good question. So if one is credentialed with through companies like Ruler or Path, does it mean the company or individual is credentialed with the insurance directly? Typically no. So I'm not particularly familiar with Ruler or Path, but for Alma and Headway, for example, if you are credentialed through Alma and Headway, they actually credential you under their group NPI. So if you still did want to use and see clients out of network, the way that you would submit claims is through your individual NPI, and that's how we would do it in Thrizer. So we would just submit it under your individual NPI, and that should not be an issue since you're not, personally or individually credentialed with that insurance company. Let's see. If we have clients who have already paid for past sessions and joined Thrizer now, can the client or clinician still submit a super review of Thrizer? Yes, we can absolutely do that for you. You just have to email it to us again, or the client can upload it directly to their portal. I will share some resources on how to get started with that right after in the recap email. What is the fee for clinicians? Again, it's just a 3% credit card fee. So there's no other monthly or yearly fee or setup fee or contracts. You could just do it for one client. You could do it for all your clients. It's just the 3%, right? And so there's really no other fees that you will be paying with Thrizer. And I do know that folks are saying this link isn't working. I'm so sorry. You will receive this via email anyway, so don't worry about that. Let me try to pop it here again. Okay, there, that link is there again if you guys want to try that, but we'll also send it via email. Cool, I know we're at time. Let me quickly scour through and see if there are any other questions I can quickly answer. Do you offer any services that clients can use directly? Yes, we do. So that is the superbill service or superbill upload service that we offer. In that case, all you have to do is just provide them with superbills. They can create their own Thrizer portal. They can verify their own benefits. They can upload their own superbills, and we'll take it from there. So if you want to be completely removed from this process, then you can absolutely do that as well. All right, I think that is pretty much it. Awesome. Cool. Well, again, thank you everyone. There were a little technical glitchy things, but I'm sorry about that, but we got through it. We're just 2 minutes over. So thanks again for coming. We'll make sure to share the recording with you. If you have any questions, I've dropped my email is just sanjana@thrizer.com. I'll include it in the email as well so that you can just reach out to me there. But Forrest, I'll pass to you. Anything you want to say? Parting words?
No, just thank you sharing that valuable insights. And I know from doing our webinars, it's tough to get into all the questions, but that shows
Yeah.
you're presenting on a great topic. So hopefully we'll have you back here soon.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds good. All right. Well, have a great one, everyone. See you soon.